is shuffle ball change again, right? Only you're crossing it instead of staying like that and then stepping out, but then adding the pullback.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Between Generations, Life in Two Voices. We're happy you're here. This is a podcast where my mom and I talk to wonderful humans about the lives that they lead and the careers that they give back to their community. And today we have part 2 of Sam Weber. He is what I would like to call the tap dancer extraordinaire. So, without further ado, Sam is going to do something special for us today. He's going to give us a tutorial. And so we'll watch and we'll listen, and then my mom and I will just follow up and ask some questions about what we saw. And of course, viewers, please put your questions in the comments. We will also have Sam's information below in case you want to reach out to him separately. But Sam, welcome to the show. Welcome back. We're so excited that you're here. The first part of this series was to talk about you and your life and how you got to this point of being an amazing tap dancer and your passion for it. So, welcome. I'm going to send it over to you to take it away.
Welcome, Sam.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be back. So we'll start with the tutorial then. We'll start with that a little bit. Is that what you'd like to do?
Yes, that sounds good.
Sure.
All right. Okay. So yeah, I was going to just explain a little bit about how tap dancing works. The same way if I were a pianist and I explained how a piano works, I would say, there's a little felt hammer inside the piano. When you press the key, the little hammer hits the string, and that's how the piano works. I'm going to kind of try to explain tap dancing the same way, So we've got, the instrument consists of a good wood floor, which I've got here, and maple is one of the best hardwoods. It should be hardwood, and maple has been the preferred wood of tap dancers for a long time. And then the shoes, which have metal plates on the toe and heel, and tap dancers can be kind of selective about the kinds of taps they like. I tend to keep my weight very forward on the balls of the feet, so I like a heavy heel so that the heel balances the sound of the toe, because the sound of the toe tends to be louder. So I have a heavier heel. And then what we do is basically we do all the normal everyday movements of walking, running, hopping, skipping, and jumping, just like in folk dancing. In folk dancing, you have, things where things like that, and people skip and do things like that. Jump, 2 feet, 1 foot. But what we do in tap dancing is we have techniques to add extra sounds to these things. So you think of a normal walking step. If you hear somebody walking down the hall, it usually makes two sounds because people walk, heel first, right? Heel toe, and you hear them, right? But we want to be very clear about how many sounds we make. So in tap dancing, a step is on the ball of the foot, right? We want one clear sound. So that is a step, and it's on the ball of the foot because we don't want the heel to fall down and make another sound, right? So we just want that. So it's like being in this slight, what you would call a plie, bent knee position. And so if I'm stepping, let's say about like this, right? So now one way of adding a sound to that is the movements that add sounds usually don't require any weight. So, for example, a brush, right? A brush is a movement that doesn't have a transfer of weight, and if I add that to the step, then we get two sounds, right? So, if I'm stepping like this, and this is my speed, and I add that brush, now I have two sounds to every one, and we call that movement a flap. That, yeah. So now I'm not going any faster as far as my transfer of weight, but I've got twice as many sounds. right? And then we have a movement called a shuffle, where you basically just shake your leg and your foot flops, right? And that flop, makes two sounds, right? So if I add that to the step, and this is my speed, and I've got three sounds in the same amount of time. I'm still not going any faster. It's not as though I were stepping that fast. I'm still stepping this fast, right? But and then the next thing I can do, of course, is because I'm landing on the ball of the foot, I could drop my heel. And this is another way to add, right? So if I add the heel to what I've already got, right?
Interesting.
And now I've got four sounds with every step, and I'm still not going any faster, right? I'm still only going this fast. Whereas if you imagine running that fast, right, that would take a lot of energy. But this is actually quite easy once you get the hang of the technique of adding the extra sounds. And sometimes when you're adding more sounds, you're actually transferring your weight slower. So, we have a thing where you can make a sound coming off the floor from one foot to the other, right? And if I add that to everything else and do an extra heel, now I'm actually only transferring my weight this fast, right? Right. So actually, I'm slowing down by adding all those extra sounds, and this is how the technique works, basically. And then it's just a question of all these different ways, you know, right, that you can add things, making it comfortable to move and still do that. You don't have to be, you know, trying to move particularly fast, and then it's the the rest is musical. We have swing, which is kind of where tap could start. Swing being the this feeling in jazz. That kind of feeling. We can also do a straight feel, like I know you like salsa. You can have
Wow.
you can have straighter rhythms and so on. And so basically that is how it works. And the rest is, just, developing musically, developing the, different techniques for making different sounds, more sounds. There's so many different sounds that the foot can make. Not only the ball, the heel. There's the whole foot to create an accent with a stamp. So, for example, to accent something, and then just ways of getting your foot to bounce. You know? Getting your heel right, right. Just yeah, it requires your foot. People think you tap dance with your feet. People who don't tap dance, but you actually tap dance with your legs, and the foot just kind of flops and goes along. It's completely relaxed, so that when you move here, it just responds. Yeah, what would make it difficult would be to actually use the foot and the ankle like this. We don't want to do that. We want to keep it just completely relaxed, and keep the movement small. Some people think the small movements are going to happen with small muscles, which would be like here, but no, it's the big muscles that make these things, happen. Because if I try to do that with my foot, these little muscles in the front of my leg are going to get real tired. But if I do it here, I can do this all day, like that, and and not get tired. So that's a few things about the technique. So now I wonder if you have any questions about that before I go on. There might be some. Um,
Mhm, mhm.
I do have a question. I do remember the shuffle ball change. So can you demonstrate that? Because that's fixed in my memory.
yeah. So I tell people there are basically six basic elements in tap dancing: touch, step, hop, leap, ball change, and skip. And that everything else is made of those things, adding extra sounds to those things. So touch is where you don't transfer the weight. Your foot comes down, so some part of your foot, and you don't put weight on it, right? And it can be more than one sound. It can be shuffle, you can put the heel in there, you can put more in there, but it's not transferring weight. And then step, right, which I just showed, was you can add a brush to it, add a shuffle to it, and that's transferring your weight. A hop is just jumping up and down on the same foot, right? And you can add extra sounds to that too, right? Um, and then leaping to the other foot. And then two sound elements include skipping, which is a hop and a step in one count, and you can add things sounds to that, and ball change, which is two steps in one count, right? So I'm doing two steps, but I'm falling through the first step into the second step so that they can happen quickly. And then putting the shuffle in front of it, this is the way this is the way people usually learn it. Although it could go very fast, right? Right. But yeah, ball change is one of our most important, and these things all occur in folk dancing, right? In folk dancing, you see things like there's just a bunch of ball changes, you know. Yeah, two steps in one beat or less is what a ball change is, and the shuffle in front of it, and you can put the shuffle in front of anything, which is why all those movements that don't transfer weight and that make sounds before the weight transfers are so important. It's what makes tap dancing possible.
Okay, so I have a question then,
Yeah.
based off everything that you've demonstrated. So these are basic foundational steps, right? That lead into other things.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's one that I found and it's called a cramp roll.
Oh,
Are
yeah.
you familiar with that?
Yep.
So
Okay.
what is that? It sounds fancy.
Yeah. So cramp means the sounds are compressed into a small amount of time. They're cramped, right? And then roll is anytime you put several sounds together, you know like that, so a cramp roll is a combination of toes and heels, right? So let's say it's you know if I'll be like a mirror to you, right, left, right, right, right. When you do it at that speed, it's a cramp roll. When you do it at this speed, it's not, because it's not cramped, but it's just a way of learning it, right? And then there are different cramp roll patterns, like just three sound, right? It has to be a combination of toes and heels though. Or I could start it with a flap. We found out what that is, right? And finish with right, right. So those they're very useful because the cramp roll can make staccato, cleanly separated little sounds, or it can roll the sounds together to sort of create a legato sound, you know, like a 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm not always so interested in making everything cleanly separated, because sometimes you just want a rolling sound to create a long sound, which is hard to do with a percussion instrument, right? A horn can do it, The piano can do it, a violin can do it, they can sustain a note. But for us to do it, we have to find some way. And I used to play the marimba, and on the marimba, when you want to sustain a note, you roll it. You wanted to play ba ba da, you'd have to play ba ba da. You have to roll that note, that longer note. So we can do that in tap dancing too. We can create a legato sound. It's not always everything separated in like staccato notes. Sometimes it's legato. So
That is very cool. Do you know, Sam, where that four step got its name? Like, do
cramp,
you know why they call it that?
cramp. Well, just the fact that it's rolling and the sounds are cramped. Like I said, yeah, they'd call it a cramp sometimes. Where you cramp the
Is it
sounds.
really? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And usually you have to have three sounds. You know, at least three, because nobody ever calls it a cramp roll when you've only got two. For some reason, they don't. And then you have to have at least three. It's interesting. Yeah. So I,
Okay.
I
Interesting.
sort of put that definition together from what everybody I know calls this thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So one more question to that. When you talk about rhythm, what are some classic rhythms that you like or that you've always danced to or that you like to teach?
Well, these days, popular music in the last 30 or more years, very straight rhythms have become popular. You don't hear modern day pop tunes that swing. Swing is this feeling of like it's like a triplet with a note missing. Like if this is your triplet, you take out the middle note, that's the third note. If I leave it out, and swing is this feeling. It's that feeling, and you don't hear that in popular music very often. You hear everything kind of straight. You hear those kinds of rhythms all the time. So I like to concentrate on swing. Not only do I like it myself to dance to, and I dance to jazz a lot and to tunes that swing, but I think that tap dancers should learn that, because it's kind of the basis of a lot of our techniques. The shuffle, like shuffle ball change, right? Like you were talking about, shuffle ball change is taught in a swing rhythm first before it's taught you know, in an even rhythm, right? And shuffles, right, before they're evened out. So swing is very. Did I get away from your question, or did I answer it there? Uh,
No, you answered it. Yeah, no, I think, for a viewer, it's just, I'm more curious about the things that I've researched, right? Like maybe it's deviating away from the basics, but it's good to understand like just the variations of what the basics are, because it seems like there's a lot just within the foundational learning of tap.
yeah, yeah, and swing is and it's really important that people learn steps in the best rhythm to learn them. You know what I mean? Before you go off and do variations, like what's the best rhythm to learn to do a shuffle? It's this, right? Because you don't have to control in something even, right? You can just let it fall and get the feeling of how your knee straightens and your foot flops against the floor, right? Before you start doing things like that, you know. So what's the best rhythm to learn flaps? Same thing, right? It's not because because those rhythms can lead people into bad habits. One thing that people want to do is use their hamstring too much because the hamstrings bend your knee, right? Like that. But see, if I'm going to hit the floor right here, I don't want to go back there because that's going to take a long time to go back there and come over there, go back there and come over there. So the movement becomes big. So I just want it to be, just this, just my quad going. So practicing in that rhythm helps you to practice, just picking up your knee from your hip flexor and not using your hamstring to go back there and staying over one spot. Because actually you want to make everything small. The big muscles are doing it, but the movement should be small because small movements can go fast and big movements can't. So that's basically how that works.
Thank you for that. I have one more question because, like I mentioned to you, I have been following more than a couple freestyle tappers on TikTok. And so one of the classic rhythm steps that I was curious about is called a Maxi Forward or a
Or
Maxi Ford.
yeah.
Maxi
Yeah, so
Ford.
so who have you been watching, just out of curiosity?
They're random people. I will email you their names, but I really do think that they are just people that love to practice. And now that we have this large social media presence, it's kind of like I think they just want to like put their content out there.
Yeah.
So it's nobody, they have a lot of followers, I will say that. But yeah, I don't think it's anybody that you particularly know. I think these are just fans of tap that just want to
Okay.
put their content out there.
Okay, so Maxie Ford. So this is named after a person. This is named after a guy named Max Ford, whose nickname was Maxie, right? And he did this step. I mean, and the step consisted of what people are calling a pullback. My teacher called them grace taps, but it's where you make a sound coming off of the standing foot. Sorry, right? So you brush the foot from the floor. I'm jumping. If I'm jumping from the right leg to the left, right? The the sound comes off the left, right? So Max Ford, he had this step where he would do, right, and that caught on, right? So then people would do it, right, or they would do it changing. Gene Kelly and his brother made that
Yes.
popular. The Kelly Maxi Ford, and they would reach their arms way out to
Yes.
make it look bigger, right? And then
Yeah.
it got to the Kelly Maxi Ford. Um, but but that's what it is, and it's very useful. I mean, you to put the pullback into things. So what this is shuffle ball change, right? It's shuffle ball change again, right? Only you're crossing it instead of staying like that and then stepping out, but then adding the pullback to it, which is the way Gene Kelly did it a lot. He did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the Maxi Ford. Yeah.
That is very, very cool. And I
That is
just have
cool.
to say how impressive it is, the sounds that are coming from your feet
Yeah.
and the shoes. I really do love listening to it. It's
Oh,
just I don't know, there's something about it that's just
well,
lovely. And like I said, I as I've watched your videos, you're just so light on your feet.
Yes.
Like
oh, thanks. That's the thing about being forward on the balls of the feet. That's I'm convinced that this is where everybody should start. With the top of the shin bone over the center of the foot till the heels come slightly off the floor. You're not holding your heel way up because that would be a strain, but you're just letting them come off. And that's what leads to feeling light. So being back on the heels, and a lot of people do some very athletic things today, getting up off the floor, but a lot of them are back on their heels, so that it appears to take an awful lot of power to do that, instead of just being, where you're ready to go up. You know, it creates a feeling of power sometimes when they do that, but not lightness, because being back on your heels, you're not going to feel that. Yeah. So yeah.
Sam, do you have people that contact you because they're going to be in shows like in San Francisco or wherever?
From time to time, yeah, yeah. People do. Yeah. Sometimes.
Just maybe like a brush up.
Yeah, and sometimes sometimes they don't give me enough time. They think I'm going to be in a show, like when, like next week. I'm like, oh, you know, but but yes, they do. And
Wow.
sometimes, they just need a little brush up, and sometimes they need a lot, and they don't give me enough time, But
Yeah, yeah.
because I think
It's
tap dancing has this kind of, what is it? It looks effortless when a lot of the dancers in film do it, and people assume that I remember this one guy came to me for lessons. His daughter had gotten him tap lessons for his birthday, and he was like 60, turning 60 or something. He'd never tap danced, but he said over the phone. I talked to him over the phone. He said, "I've been watching Gene Kelly, and I feel like I can do it." And I thought, uh-oh, either he's a very athletic guy who has some idea of what Gene Kelly's doing, or he has no idea at all, and he had no
Right.
idea at all. Yeah, I just, just the idea of transferring his weight quickly, just kind of completely threw him. Yeah, it, but it's that,
he was completely green? Like,
yeah, yeah. He'd never had a lesson,
oh
his
wow.
first lesson, but he said, I've been watching Gene Kelly, and I feel like I can do it. So, yeah. But whereas, if somebody starts ballet, they have this idea that it's very difficult. They're ready for ballet to be hard. They're not ready for tap dancing to be hard. It's funny, because there's a lot of coordination involved, and a lot of, the quick transfer of weight is one thing that kind of throws people, because no matter how slow the tempo is, the transfer of weight is always, it's always instant like that. Your tempo could be super slow, like 2, 3, 4, and it's still that fast, because you have to be able to get that other foot ready to do whatever it's going to do. You know.
Now, I have a follow-up question about body type. Is there such a thing as a certain body type that lends itself more to tap? Could anyone do this? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's really no no body type in tap dancing as aesthetically, like there is in ballet, where they're looking for the short torso, long legs, long neck, long limbs, all of that. They're looking for that, you know, and very slim. No, there isn't. I would say that if somebody is carrying a lot of weight, they should be careful if they're starting, because you're going to be basically running, hopping, skipping, jumping, running. So just like warm up carefully. Protect your joints and that kind of thing. But as far as the look, no, there isn't. No. Now there might be some show like on Broadway where they're looking for a certain type. That always happens. You know, must be this tall and so on. But that doesn't have anything to do with the actual art form.
Great that you say that. Now, the other thing that I think about is for those that might have trouble with mobility. So, in my brain, I think someone could sit down in a chair, have their tap shoes on, and still create a rhythm.
Hmm.
Can you talk about that? Have you ever met anyone that's done that, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and a lot of famous performers have done tap numbers sitting down. The Condos brothers, for one, they did some amazing stuff sitting down. One thing that's hard sitting down is, this straightening of the knee to make things happen, right? And when you're sitting down, your knees are perpetually bent, right? So if I'm like this, I could get into a taller chair, I guess. Maybe a tall stool. But see, it becomes kind of hard to do that correctly. There's other
Yeah.
things that you can do. That you can do when you're sitting down. But yeah, it's difficult, but not impossible. I would get a tall
Yeah.
stool if I were going to do that, so I could more or less extend my legs.
So then you answered, I think, another thought that I had. As you're sitting, right, and you're still moving your feet and you're still creating a rhythm, Do you think that sitting exercises the muscles at all? Do you think that that is something that helps with your tap too? Right? When you're isolating muscles, other muscles are activated, right?
Yeah. There's a kind of a famous routine. It's the Copasetics. The Copasetics was a group of dancers called themselves the Copasetics because Bill Robinson used that word. He would say everything is copacetic. He kind of coined
Copacetic.
that word. And they did a chair dance, and a lot of people learned their chair dance, and I've taught it at festivals, and I my back was killing me after I did the chair dance, sitting for a whole hour and doing that. You have to be careful
Right. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's what I mean about the tall chair, because your hip flexors and your back, if you can't sit up straight, I mean,
Yes.
this could be, yeah, so you have to be careful about that. But yeah, it was exercise, all right. It was strenuous, actually, you know. And they have
Yes.
things like the Copasetics where they pick up both feet and clap, under their, while they're sitting, you know, that's
Yeah.
it's one thing to do the number once or twice, but I was doing it for a whole hour with this class, and oh boy, I felt it for a few days.
Mm. It was a workout. Okay. Yes. No, please proceed with your tutorial. This is all great. My brain is stimulated right now by all the
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any other questions? Because could you have?
Well, I think for someone who is interested in tap, has never done it before, what are some things that you think would help them prepare maybe their mind and their body before they even decide to look for a studio or have the thought of, oh yeah, let me just put on YouTube and just try this out? Like, what is the preparation behind that? What could they do? Let's say they have their tap shoes already, but they're just afraid to go to the class. What are some things that they could do at home?
Um, if you watch tutorials, you got to be careful which tutorials you watch because there is a lot of you know wrong information out there. that's one of the dangers. Like I talked about the hamstring and how we don't want to do that. And you see that a lot. You see people teaching. You're going to brush in a shuffle. You're going to brush forward, so they prepare like this, right? And you're going to brush forward and brush back, right? So and if they do these big movements, and when people learn that, it's very hard to unlearn it. And what you want is that, and if it's shuffle step, it's not, it's right. It's just that, right? So, got to watch out for the tutorials because there's a lot of wrong information. And the other thing that you see a lot is people putting one foot down next to the other foot and then picking that foot up instead of an instantaneous weight change, where you don't see 2 feet before. Yeah, that's really important. That's an important basic. So yeah, it might be just a good idea for people to have some of those ideas. I mean, I wish I could direct people to better tutorials on YouTube. I know there are good tutorials on YouTube. I don't know. I can't name any right off the bat. I've got some instructional videos
Yeah.
that are, basic. They're sold through Rusty Frank's Swing Shift on Tap website, swingshiftontap.com. So, and there I'm talking about all these things, and that's really important.
Yeah.
And also, music helps. You don't have to have studied music, but it really does help because when people understand the different divisions of the beat, you know, so you've got, let's say, quarter notes, which 2, 3, 4. Now those are not really quarter notes because if they were, they'd have to sustain for a whole beat, and they're staccato, right? But we're calling quarter notes, and then eighth notes. So there's 2 notes to a beat. Triplets. 16th notes, and so forth, and also understanding musical form, is really important. And musicians take to that kind of thing pretty quickly. They understand musical structure, and that really does help. Although you can learn that in tap dancing. It's good to find a tap teacher who can explain things musically and count things, count rhythms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when I've watched these TikTok fancy dancers, I've noticed that it's not just the feet and the lower half of the body that's moving. They're very theatrical when they're tapping, right? Their arms are going out, up, they're turning their torso. They're doing a lot. It's very showy. So I'm curious, um, is there a is there a space where we would call it traditional tap and fancy tap and Broadway tap and let's use our whole body tap? Like, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to learn is just something as natural as, let's see, as opposition. So, you know, uh, one of the most important things to learn is, that as my teacher would say, the hand is opposite to the foot in front, right? And that's basic opposition, right? So it doesn't matter whether the foot in front is free like this or whether it has weight on it like that. See, it's still opposite to the foot in front, right? And then just, so like if I cross the right foot over, then, so if I'm doing shuffle hop step going forward, then my arms are in opposition to the front foot, just like they would be walking, right? Or going back, opposition to the front foot, right? I mean, that's really basic, but if you learn to do that in everything, you know, you know, or like the Maxi Ford, right? You could do the Kelly Maxi Ford, or right, you could have the arm in opposition, and learning opposition is one of the most important things you can learn in tap dancing, and also that the energy is in the hand. You're moving your hand, and the rest of the arm goes along. So it's not moving the arm with a dead hand, right? Right. It's
Yeah.
the energy is
Doesn't look very
right,
fancy.
and that's
Yeah.
yeah, and people that the arm and the hand is dead, right? But it's just like I tell people, it's just like you were a baby and you wanted to reach for something and you thought about where your hand was going, and you didn't think about the rest of your arm. You just thought about where your hand was going, and that's what you do. You just think about where your hand is going, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Now,
again, other forms of dance do help that. If someone has taken jazz, or you know, jazz is a good one. You know. Yeah.
okay, that makes sense. And I think that was very helpful. And also, in the sense that for those that are listening, right, I would recommend, I'm sure Sam wouldn't recommend you just throwing up a YouTube video and start going wild with tap, right? Like you have muscles and little facets that are delicate. So please don't go out and just put up a YouTube video and start going crazy. Like basically what I'm hearing, Sam, is that we really do you need to warm up your body to be able to do
Warm
these
because
moves.
I had a student who started and she got very enthusiastic, and she was, because we do a lot of hopping, because getting people on the balls of their feet and moving up is really important. So she was practicing, and she developed plantar fasciitis, which is painful and which lasted a while, and so I would say calf stretches and make sure you warm up and make sure you cool down and all of that. Yeah, because if you've never done it before, you know, plantar fasciitis is the kind of thing that happens when you haven't done something before and you suddenly do it. Like I developed it for a little while when I was in Germany, and a friend, her son was playing soccer in the backyard, and so I went out and I was kicking the soccer ball around with him. He was like 8 or something, and I hadn't been running, I've been tap dancing, which is not quite the same thing. And all of a sudden I'm running, and I've developed a little plantar fasciitis. Fortunately, I, rested, got over it. But, got to be careful of just jumping into something, kind of maybe ease into it. Be aware of how your body's feeling when you're doing this.
Absolutely. And actually, that leads me to ask, what shoe recommendations do you have for viewers for first time dancers?
A lot of people get the basic block, that's BLOCH shoe, you know, which comes with taps on it. I would like to see somebody get maybe the next, if they don't want to spend a lot of money on a high end pair of shoes, right away, at least get the next one up. Not the most basic model, but the next one. Same with Capezio. Uh, and I think I would probably recommend for a beginner a Capezio rather than, well, here I am plugging stuff, and I'm going to get sued. But Block makes some good shoes, but just that first model, that basic model, there's sometimes some problems with it. One is that sometimes the toes turn up and the tap doesn't touch the floor. It should sit on the floor, and the toes turn up. A lot of a shoe expert that I talked to said that this is referred to as a toe spring. Your street shoes might have that, so that when you walk, it gives you a little push off. It helps you push off in your walk. But tap shoes shouldn't have that. Tap shoes should lay flat so that the tap is on the floor. But sometimes the basic block shoe is so turned up that the tap doesn't touch the floor at all, and people have to take them back. So I wouldn't do that one. And then it just depends on how much people want to spend. They can go for the top of the line shoe right away, but usually beginners don't want to do that. But I would say at least the next model up. you know. And some of the brands are Capezio. Um, there's now the Jason Samuel Smith shoe that's made by Block. I think that's a little more expensive. It's also kind of heavy, so you have to. I'd tell beginners to get a little more experience in a lighter shoe where they can develop the nuance of the sound. As a heavier shoe, if you don't know what you're doing, is just going to sound clunky and loud. Until you get the skill to vary the tone. And then there's Sodansa. That's another model. There are a lot of good shoes out there now. A lot of people like Miller and Ben. You know, uh, I haven't haven't had experience with all of these. You um, I used Capezios for most of my life. And I still get their K360, which is their best model. And also, these are Ruben Sanchez shoes. They're made in Barcelona. I have a bunch of these, and they're very nice. Also, I really like them. But then now you're talking about hundreds hundreds of dollars, so people might not want to spend that at first. Yeah.
Okay, okay,
The same
great.
thing with a floor,
So,
by the way. If anybody, I was just going to say, if anybody wants to get a floor, there are ways to go that are similar. Like, for example, this floor is made by a company called Omara. It's probably now this size floor would cost over $700, but then
wow.
and it's very good. It's got cushions underneath and so on. But you could also go to Builder's Emporium and get a piece of plywood with a surface of maple, and maybe put some carpet remnants or something underneath it to cushion it, and that would cost you less than $50 probably, or maybe $50. So it's, again, you don't have to spend a fortune on these things. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a level of investment, absolutely, which is good. That's absolutely great for viewers to know. And I was going to ask you about the space. So the space that you have there, that piece of maple, it looks small to me because I'm seeing it on camera. Do you know, is there like a specific size you would recommend for beginner dancers to use?
This is 4x4, and it's pretty good, you know.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, it comes in. This one comes in two pieces, and it's connected with a cable underneath. So you could even get a maybe half this size, which would be from here to there, you know, just that half, you know. But I think this is probably a good size, the 4x4, you know. But again, you know, you could get a piece of plywood or particle board, you know, and it would be much cheaper. I had that for a
It's
while
good to
when I
know.
was living in it, and I was working with the jazz tap ensemble, and most of the time I was in a studio, of course, you know, practicing. But I did have a piece of particle board at home, and it was great. You know, it was just fine. So,
Okay. Now, is maple the only thing that tappers should be dancing on, or are there other surfaces that are okay to dance on?
well, other hardwoods, you know, oak. Uh, what are some other hardwoods? I can't. I'm blanking on hardwoods now. But
What
yeah,
about hickory?
hmm? Ash is
What about
one.
hickory?
Hickory.
Ash.
Hickory
Yes,
is
ash.
yeah, yeah. I mean, maple has been real popular with tap dancing, and also oak. You know, but hardwood.
Yeah.
You know, and wood is what dancers should be dancing on, and they really shouldn't be. I'm
Okay.
glad I have a chance to say this. They really shouldn't be dancing on Marley. Shouldn't be dancing on a Marley floor. Um, it's sticky. You know, you can twist your your ankle. You know because you know it doesn't let you turn. You should be able to slide, and also mainly it doesn't give you the sound. You don't really get the difference between a toe and a heel. Even you just get a sound. You don't get any different sounds. It's just like a sound, you know, and there's no nuance to it. And you can't, you know, do any kind of sliding kind of movements. You know, you can't do that. And for all of these things, there's a sliding over the floor that your feet have to be able to do. You know, which you can't do on Marley. And for beginners especially, they're supposed to be learning what tap's supposed to sound like, and you can't learn that on a Marley floor. Um, and Marley, if in case people don't know, is that kind of linoleum that they put down in ballet studios. Um, but there are different thicknesses of it, and sometimes what they do is they put down a real thin one and have people tap on it. You can kind of hear a sound, but it's still not ideal, you know. And the thick, sticky stuff is definitely what you shouldn't be dancing on. Um, yeah, there's a whole movement in tap of trying to get people to stop, you know, uh, dancing on Marley floors. Sometimes in tap competitions, they still have a Marley floor down. You know, it's crazy. Oh, and I did want to say one thing about tap shoes while I think of it. They have split sole tap shoes. You know, the sole is split so that you can get a point supposedly in the shoe. Nobody should ever wear those. They're terrible. They don't give any support. They're not good for your feet, and they don't sound good. Uh, so yeah, no more split sole tap shoes. Yeah.
Well, while we're on the question of shoes, so I have seen tappers, females mostly, that have a good size heel. Now, do you recommend that they start with the flat or with a heel
Yeah.
on it?
I recommend they start with the flat. So even back in the day when women were supposed to wear heels, you know, that it was just like expected, you know, they didn't start with heels. They started in flat shoes. It was kind of like, yeah, I compared it to the idea of girls getting their point shoes in ballet schools, you know, where they graduate to dancing on point. And first they start in soft shoes and then they graduate. So, you know, at our studio, the girls would have the regular low heel shoes. And then eventually they would get their high heel shoes, which is what they were supposed to dance in for the rest of their life, you know. But, and then high heeled shoes kind of got a bad during what we call the resurgence of tap or the tap renaissance. High heeled shoes were kind of looked down upon because people said you didn't get a very good sound. You know, the whole idea was to make the leg look longer if you're a chorus girl, you know, to have that look, you know. And it wasn't so much about the sound. So the heel, you know, didn't have such a solid sound. Now, I don't know if you know who Dormisha is. She's a great tap dancer in New York. Okay, you can look her up. But she started to dance in high heels just to prove that you could get a good sound in those heels, and she did. You know, but still, not everybody can. It takes takes some skill to do that. So I would recommend that people definitely start in regular Oxford, you know, and then if they have need for high heels, like they're going to be in a show and they need it or something, don't get them super high. Just get a solid heel that's a little bit higher, so that you still have some stability and get a good sound.
That's good information.
And Sam, do you have people that actually call and say, I'd like to start taking lessons?
Yeah, I get mostly emails, but yeah.
Okay.
And then
And then,
I have I don't have an absolute beginning class. I have a beginners with experience on Wednesday evenings at City Dance in San Francisco. So and sometimes they need some private lessons to kind of get started before they get into the class. But yeah, I get calls from beginners. Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. Are there, so if there is a beginner that's just coming into tap, is there like a first step that you teach and a set, like are there top like 5 or 10 steps to teach somebody that's brand new?
Well, yeah, I mean, stepping for one. I mean, really, sometimes I'll give just touch step, and landing on the ball of the foot, like emphasizing that you're going to bring the top of the shin bone forward over the center of the foot till your heels come off the floor, and then just doing this, and then touching in the back. And that's a good way to practice that opposition that I was talking about, right? So the hand goes opposite to the foot when it's in the front, and it goes opposite to the standing foot when you touch in the back, right? So you're kind of getting the hang of that, and then usually in the very beginning, I have people go to the bar, just like ballet dancers use, and hold the bar and just practice, getting the feeling of what the shuffle is, of how your foot's there, you pick up the knee without using the hamstring to pull it back, and then just go back to that spot and let the toe hit the floor before you straighten your knee and your foot flops down, right? Just practicing that, and then practicing it, leaving it on the floor, and then trying to do a flap where you slide it forward and put your weight on it. So I'll have people just do this, working on that, the one that transfers the weight, right? And then shuffle step, right? And then inserting a hop into it a little bit later on, or shuffle ball change, right? Learning what a ball change is, so you can, where your body stays over the second foot, right? So you never want to go away from it, right? Because that takes too long. You want to stay over the second foot. It's something people have to get the hang of. So then if you do shuffle ball change, this foot goes back, your body stays over that foot, right? Yeah, some just really basic things like that. If you're going to do a shuffle and move your foot to the back, you still finish the shuffle here before you move it to the back, right? So, and come back to where you're going to start the shuffle again, right? So you don't do that, right? But it's always coming up and down. Those are some really basic things,
Yeah. It's fascinating. The sound, it's magnetic, you know, and it reminds me of my mother when she was tapping, downstairs, and it's like it
Uh-huh.
just brings back warm memories of that.
Yeah, the sound, people have tried to get different sounds in tap dancing by gimmicks, by electronic sounds, that was,
Yeah.
popular for a while. They tried that in the movie Tap with Gregory Hines, which Gregory even admitted was a gimmick for the movie to try to get interest in the movie because no tap dancer likes that weird electronic sound. They like the sound of taps on wood. But if you
Yeah.
remember that movie, a sound engineer puts pickups under the taps in his shoes, and he says, now you'll be able to tap so loud they'll hear you like miles away. It's, but that's not really
Wow.
what anybody's interested in. It's really the sound of wood hasn't been improved on, I don't think, in tap dancing.
It seems as though that piece of wood that you have, did you say 4 by 4?
Yeah,
Somewhere around there?
yeah.
It for me, I'm thinking, is that too small of a space? But I guess not, because
Well,
you're
you can't.
stationary.
I mean, if you want to practice traveling and so on, you do need a bigger space. You should be in a studio. This is this is okay for me to practice on to like practice technique and stuff like that. Just in a small space. But if I were going to move and I wanted to travel and turn and so on, yeah, then it's too small. Yeah. But there's an awful lot you can practice just doing just technique stuff. Just you know that kind of thing.
So cool. It's really, really, really cool. Natalie, do you have anything that you wanted to say?
You know what? I am just very, very happy. The sounds make me happy, the tapping makes me happy, and
Yeah.
just listening to your feet make me happy. So, I'm super appreciative of your time, Sam. This has been so special to have you give us some amazing information, right? I mean, for me, the biggest takeaway is you taking time with us to do this for us. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm really glad to have the
Thank you.
opportunity to you know say some of these things. you know, all kind of in one place because I hope it'll be helpful. Um, these,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there, before we close the show, Sam, could you do a little routine, like just something impromptu?
I'm going to call them happy feet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, happy feet.
okay, almost. Let's try this. Some of
So fascinating. Thank you so, so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sam, hopefully in the future, we would, I would love to invite you back um, to be
Oh
on the
yeah,
show again later on, you know.
I'd love to.
Um,
This has been great.
you're just so pleasant and such a nice man and so giving of your time. We're so appreciative of this.
Well,
Um,
yeah,
for
appreciate the opportunity to present some of this. Yeah.
And we will link your information down below so that viewers can see it. And for our viewers, if you like this content, of course, we have an array of content under the umbrella of mental health. Um, please smash that like button and subscribe. We would appreciate it. And Natalie?
Sam, it has been a pure pleasure to have you on this morning. I have to say, it's effortless. The way you move is just effortless and it's so beautiful. I would love to just have a recording and listen to your feet all
Oh,
day.
thank you.
So is there any last things that you would like to say to our viewers before we close the show?
Well, it's been delightful to be on the show, and I'm really glad I had an opportunity to share some important information. So, because like the questions you were asking that beginners ask about starting, I hope I've answered some of those, and that some of those things can get out there. Because there's a lot of good information out there. There's also misinformation out there. So, if we can, add to the good information, that would be great. And I'm glad I had an opportunity.
Okay. Thank you, viewers, for watching. Natalie and I really, really appreciate putting out content and having people like what we do. And thank you. And thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you both. It's been a pleasure.